Hi there, and welcome to a quiet moment with me here at Haze Hue. I'm a beginner watercolor painter, just a couple of months in, and I'm starting this channel today, the 24th of June 2025, to document my journey. Each video features a painting, sometimes from a tutorial, like today's by Lois Morgaine Davidson Art, paired with a gentle story to keep you company. There's a bend in the forest trail where the trees part just enough to let the light in. It happens quietly. There's no fanfare, no sudden brightness, just a softening of the shadows, a hush in the air, and the glimmer of gold across the mossy ground. People in the village call it Willow Bend. Some walk straight through it without looking up, but others, like Mara, linger. She comes here often, not for any grand reason, just to walk, to breathe, to feel her boots crunch against the path and her fingertips brush the fern fronds as she passes. She follows a familiar rhythm, 5 slow steps, a pause, then 5 more. There's something about moving slowly that makes the colors brighter. She passes a cluster of mossy rocks, damp and dark and soft to the touch. Above them, a shaft of light cuts through the canopy, almost theatrical, as if placed there by some unseen hand. Mara pauses and breathes in. She has nothing to do but be here. That, she's learned, is sometimes the hardest thing and the most healing. A beetle crawls across a nearby root, its shell glossy and black, with hints of emerald. She crouches to watch it navigate the uneven bark. It's not in a hurry either. Above, the wind shifts. A few leaves break free and spiral slowly to the ground, catching the light as they fell. One brushes her sleeve. She smiles. The world is full of small, perfect interruptions. She just needed to slow down enough to notice them. Willow Bend isn't a destination. There's no bench, no sign, but Mara has come to notice its quiet rituals. In early spring, the light flickers pale and new. By summer, it filters through thick green leaves, dappled and warm. Autumn brings long shadows and copper fire. And winter gives the clearest light of all, cold, bright, and almost blue. Today, the forest wears its early summer dress. The air is cool in the shade, but warm on Mara's shoulders when she steps into that sunlit patch. She doesn't rush. There's nowhere to be. A jay flees across the path. Its wings flash cobalt, then is gone. Mara watches it disappear, half smiling. Nature never waits for an audience. That's what makes it feel like a gift. She kneels near a patch of clover. The leaves are small, perfectly formed, catching light at their tips. Her fingers drift across the edges without picking. She likes that not everything needs to be kept. A breeze moves through, lifting her hair and carrying with it a faint sense of pine. She closes her eyes, just for a moment. The forest hums quietly, not silence, but softness. Then a rustle, not loud, not startling, just a gentle shuffle of something small. She looks up and spots a rabbit paused at the edge of a bush. His ears twitch, but it doesn't run. Myra stays still, breath held. For a moment, they simply exist together. Then it hops away, disappearing into shadow. She smiles to herself. Moments like these can't be planned. They just happen, like the sunbeams through the trees. You simply have to be there when they arrive. She rises slowly, washing her hands on her jeans, and continues along the trail. The light changes with each step, shifting from gold to green to something in between. There's a fallen tree up ahead, half swallowed by moss and vines. She's passed it many times, but today she decides to stop. The bark is patterned with tiny grooves, as if carved by time itself. A pale moth rests there, wings folded like parchment. It doesn't move when she leans closer. She watches the rise and fall of his tiny body, alive, still, unbothered. Beyond the log, a shallow stream trickles over smooth stones. The sound is faint but steady, a thread of music beneath the hush. She sits beside it, knees drawn up, elbows resting. A dragonfly hovers briefly above the water, flickers blue and vanishes. She wonders where it goes. A stick drifts past on the current. Mara follows its path, imagining the journey it might take, how far it might float, whether it will get caught on a root or make it to the river. She likes that she doesn't know. Some things are better left unmeasured. The moment stretches long and still. She could stay here, watching light dance on the water, until the sun begins to lower and the air changes. But eventually she stands. There is more forest to explore, more light to follow. The path narrows now, gently rising towards a ridge lined with slender gums. Their pale trunks shimmer like silver in the filtered light, bark peeling in curling ribbons. Myra walks quietly, her steps muffled by fallen leaves and soft earth. Somewhere ahead, a kookaburra calls out, sudden and bright, then fades back into hush. At the crest, she pauses. The canopy opens up slightly here, revealing slivers of sky. Wisps of cloud drift lazily across the blue. A breeze carries the scent of eucalyptus and something faintly sweet, perhaps wattle blooming early. There's a flat stone near the edge of the ridge, a place she sat before. She lowers herself slowly, taking in the view. Not grand, but familiar. The treetops sway in rhythm, a sea of green sighing gently below. Myra closes her eyes. She's not thinking of anything in particular, not planning, not remembering, just listening, just being. The warmth of the stone seeps into her palms. The hush wraps around her again. She exhales and feels something inside her loosen, like a knot gently untying. Moments like this don't shout. They don't ask to be captured or shared. They simply exist, waiting to be noticed. And Mara does. She notices. The descent is slower. Her legs feel heavy, but not tired. It's a kind of groundedness she doesn't mind. As the trail curls downward, pockets of wildflowers bloom in the undergrowth. Tiny paper daisies and native violets catch the light, unexpected colour among the grain. She stops beside a small clearing. It's a little more than a circle of light framed by bracken, but it calls her attention. A single spiderweb stretches between two twigs, the threads shimmering with dew. Not many people would notice it. Fewer still would stop. Mara crouches again. The web holds perfectly still. She traces its spiral with her eyes, admiring the quiet craft of it. Something about its fragility makes it feel sacred. From somewhere above, a rosella lands briefly on a low branch. Its feathers flare crimson and cobalt. Mara smiles. These flashes, so fleeting, so vibrant, always feel like reminders of beauty, of colour, of presence. The rosella doesn't stay long. Neither does Mara. She rises again, brushing her palms, and continues. The forest begins to thin. The light shifts, still soft, but more open now, with wider patches of sky between the trees. And ahead, she can just make out the faint suggestion of the trail's end, a break in the greenery where forest gives way to field. Not yet, she thinks, not quite yet. Mara takes a slower pace now, almost reluctant. The forest has become familiar, its silence a comfort, its rustling leaves like breath. The trees here are older, taller, with thicker trunks and bark like deep wrinkles. Some lean in odd angles, shaped by storms or time. She finds one with a hollow, a perfect pocket at its base, and kneels beside it. Inside, a scattering of leaves, a smooth stone, a feather, perhaps offerings left by the wind, or by someone else, quietly, like her. She places a small seed pod from her coat pocket into the hollow. It's not a ritual exactly, just a quiet moment of giving something back. Birdsong rises and falls around her, not urgent or loud, but layered. She imagines the canopy above as a grey-green ceiling, full of tiny singers, each with a part to play. A leaf brushes her cheek as it falls. She smiles, brushing it into her palm. It's heart-shaped, veined, fragile at the edges. She keeps it for a while, just walking, holding it lightly. The trail curves once more, and a new scent rises. Dry grass, warm earth, and something faintly floral. The field must be close. But Mara slows again. Her fingers drift across the bark of another tree. She is not quite ready to step back into the open. Here, among the trunks and shadows, she feels most herself. Quiet, observant, at ease. She lets the breeze move around her one more time, then takes a breath and walks on. The village path winds gently now beneath Mara's feet. Though the trees have faded behind her, the hush they offered clings to her shoulders like a shawl. She passes a fence made of old timber, weathered silver grey and covered in places with tiny lichen colonies. A magpie watches her from its perch atop of one of the posts, silent, still, almost regal. She nods in its direction, and it blinks slowly, unimpressed but unbothered. Ahead, the road forks. To the left, the main lane. To the right, a narrower track leading past the orchard. She chooses the orchard. It's not the season for fruit, but the trees, old and knotted, still stand proudly, their branches arched like open arms. She runs her hand along the nearest trunk, feeling the textures, smooth bark, rough edges, soft patches where moss had taken hold. A breeze shakes the upper branches, and a few petals from late bloomers fall like confetti. One lands in her hair. Mara doesn't remove it. She lets it stay. The grass beneath her boots is damp and lush. She steps slowly, her footprint left behind in dew-darkened imprints. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime sounds, delicate and distant. It comes from one of the cottages just beyond the rise. The tones are uneven, more whisper than song, but she likes them. They make her think of lullabies from long ago. She pauses near a crumbling stone wall, half covered in ivy. A single snail moves slowly across its top. Another small traveller. Mara smiles. Every path holds its own kind of light. Some glimmer, some glow, some simply warm you quietly, like the memory of a kind word. She moves on. The sky above has shifted. The blue is softer now, tinged with rose along the edges. It reminds Mara of early evenings spent on her grandmother's porch, the quiet moments just before lamps were lit. She reaches a low wooden gate and lets herself through. It creaks gently on its hinge, the sound oddly comforting. Beyond it lies a small field scattered with native grasses and golden wattle in bloom. Here the breeze feels different, open, sun-warmed, scented faintly with dry earth and honey. A narrow trail curves along the fence line. She follows it, watching her shadow stretch long beside her. It flickers in and out between tufts of grass, a companion made of light and motion. In the distance, she sees a pair of galahs perched on an overhead wire, their soft pink feathers glowing in the sun. They chatter briefly, then fall quiet again, content to sway in the breeze. Myra walks slower now, not out of weariness, but to give the moment space. Some days, she thinks, are not meant to be filled, only noticed. She rounds a bend where the tall grass breaks into a pocket of low spreading gums. The bark here is smoother, ghostly, luminous, almost blue in the shifting light. The air cools slightly in the shadows. She hears the tick of insects and the distant thrum of a tractor far beyond the hill. There's an old timber bench nestled beneath the largest tree, half covered in lichen and leaning just a little. Myra settles onto it slowly, stretching her legs and letting her hands rest in her lap. The wood is cool, the kind of cool that settles you, reminds you to pause. She listens to the rhythm of her breath, to the small creaks of wood beneath her, to the faraway rustle of grass. Here the world feels very far away, and yet more present than ever. She tilts her head back and watches a cloud drift lazily above the treetops. There's a bird circling, too high to name, its wings unmoving as it glides. For the first time in a while, Myra feels like she has all the time in the world. She smiles to herself, and in that moment, she truly believes it. Myra rises from the bench and follows the path as it thins beneath her feet, narrowing into a soft line between wild mint and feathery grass. The scent of eucalyptus sharpens as she nears a gentle incline. Sunlight filters through wisps of cloud, casting silver glimmers across the field's edge. She spots a patch of bracken, their fronds curled tightly like sleeping hands. To her right, a small wooden stile marks a change in the boundary. She climbs it slowly, pausing at the top to look back. The path behind her glows, not brightly, but with the hushed light of presence, of moments that mattered, even if only to her. On the other side, the air feels hushed again. A shallow creek cuts through a gully, its water whispering over smooth stones. She kneels beside it, cupping a little water in her palms. It's cold and clear and smells of earth and sky. She doesn't need to say anything. Instead, she listens to water, to wind, to the rhythm of being alive. And when she rises again, The quiet walks with her. The path now curves gently uphill, bordered by lavender and soft-leafed wattles. Their scent follows her, warm and grounding. Mara's fingers brush the blooms as she passes, leaving a trail of stirred petals in her wake. A kookaburra laughs somewhere to her left, sudden and bright. She startles, then chuckles softly, a little wake-up call from the bush itself. Ahead, the hill levels off into an open space, a small clearing edged by she-oaks and ringed in stone. Someone long ago must have arranged them, not perfectly, but intentionally, like a quiet gathering place for those who wander. She steps into the circle and stands still. There's no sign, no marker, no monument, and yet the air feels expectant, like it's holding its breath. Mara closes her eyes. For a moment, she lets herself drift, not away, but deeper into presence, into place, into a hush that doesn't need words. Then she breathes in and slowly out and keeps walking. The sun now leans lower in the sky, soft and drowsy. Light pools in the folds of the land like spilt honey, warming the hillside ahead. Mara follows a fence line, dappled with shadows. Spiderwebs stretch between wooden posts, catching the light in threads of silver. She stops to admire one, not for its intricacy, but for its perseverance. The breeze picks up, sending a dry leaf skittering across the path like a tiny dancer. It spirals and lifts, carried forward by the same wind that tousles Mara's hair and stirs something deep inside her. She crests the last hill. From here, the valley opens wide. A soft quilt of trees, grassland, rooftops, and river bends. She doesn't rush. She lets the view fill her slowly. This moment, with its hush and its hush alone, is enough. And so she stays for a while. Just Mara, just the light, just the hush of the world at the close of day. When Mara finally begins her descent, the path is gentler, as if it too knows the journey is ending. The golden hour deepens around her, light catching the edges of tall grass, painting shadows long and soft. The sounds are quieter now. A single bird calling to its mate, the breeze moving through she-oak needles with a whisper like silk. She thinks of the day behind her, the cool forest, the orchard path, the creek, the bench, the hilltop, None of it grand, none of it loud, and yet it lingers like poetry. As she walks, the first few lights flicker on in the distant homes below. She wonders what stories those rooms hold. Who's just arriving home? Who's warming their hands and a cup of tea? Mara doesn't need answers. It's enough to wonder. At the final bend, she pauses. The sky is a canvas now, layers of lilac, rose, and soft blue. No brush could capture it fully. No words could do it justice. But Mara doesn't try. She simply stands and lets it be. And when she finally turns, the last of the sun rests on her back, steady and warm, a quiet farewell. She smiles, whispering, "Thank you." And with that, she walks into the twilight. Thank you for spending this quiet moment with me. If you enjoyed the painting or the story, I'd love to have you join me again. Until next time, stay curious, stay gentle.